Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia. Let's talk books, and today I'm here to talk about my October reading. So all the books that I read in October, which was a little bit less than other months this year, but it's probably to be expected as we have gotten closer and closer to election day. It has been kind of harder to focus on certain things. And while I read some really good books in October, I've definitely felt this thing of like, I need to take a little bit more time with books because of my focus and concentration, which haven't been at, the top of my game, basically. I haven't been at the top of my game, and that's totally okay. But let's get right to it. So, let's see, what did I read in October? The first book that I finished in October was Miss Meteor by Tehlor K. Mejia and Anna Marie McLemore. So I already did a standalone review of this book. So here I will just say that it is fantastic. It is a young adult book in which you're following these two teenagers as they compete in a pageant. In the process, though, these two characters are finding a little bit more about themselves. We're finding a little bit more about them and their journey towards self-acceptance. It is a beautiful, beautiful book, though. Please go check out my standalone review if you're interested, because it's a book that's really worth your time. My dogs are acting up, walking around. The second book that I finished in October was The Boss by Aya de León. So this is a book that I picked up for Latinx Heritage Month, which overlaps with October for part of October. But this is book number 2 in the Justice Hustler series. I really wanted to read something by Aya de León after I saw her in a book festival recently, and I just loved everything that she was about, and everything she said. And so I looked through the Hustler series premises, and this was the one that kind of appealed to me the most. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because I really, really like the kind of work that Aya de León presents in her romance novels. They're really social justice books. The romance in the 2 books I've read so far have kind of tended to play a minor role in the story. The focus is much more on social justice works, and in this series, in the Justice Hustlers, we're following sex workers. So if that's something that does not appeal to you in your romance novels, please just stay away from it. But if this is something that you're open to, this is a fantastic book for themes of social justice. There's a ton of plot in this book, sometimes a little too much plot. There's a lot of like side storylines that she takes us in, and that if you're not a plot driven reader, you will not like that. I am pretty plot driven, and at times it got a little too much. In this story, we have a former sex worker who now runs a health community clinic and is trying to help a former sex worker, or one of her friends from her sex worker days, kind of get back at their boss of a strip club. And then there's also the family storyline. Her sister and her have a troubled relationship, and her nieces need help, and she's trying to rediscover kind of aspects of her childhood, who her father is, and then on top of it, she is falling in love with an artist, someone who's in I think he's in the rap hip hop world. Yeah, it's a lot of plot, but I love the project of focusing on sex workers, giving them the happiness and love, and yeah, I'm really enjoying the series. I can see how De Leon is kind of evolving in her writing, and it's kind of really fantastic to see. I will have more on De Leon's work later too. So next book that I finished in October was Clouds of Witness by Dorothy L. Sayers. I actually listened to the audiobook. The audiobook was fantastic. The mystery was good. So it's a solid read. This is one of those audiobooks that I think I would have enjoyed even more when I was commuting. I am not commuting because I'm working from home during this pandemic, but this particular book is part of the Lord Peter Whimsy series, and I really like aspects of it. The narration was fantastic, but I'm having some trouble getting into audiobooks these days because I'm not commuting, and so I find that that's when I was doing most of my listening to audiobooks, and in my everyday life I haven't fit audiobooks into it, and so it was a little bit harder to kind of devote time to it. Yeah. The next book I finished was A Spy in the Struggle by Aya de León. It's just really nice. It's a nice book because this is where I'm seeing the Leon's evolution, right? That in that other book, The Boss, there was too much plot, and in A Spy in the Struggle, it's still a very plot-driven story, but there's a lot less subplots happening, and I think that makes the story a lot better. There's still a lot of complications here. For example, the themes of social justice are still the main focus in this book, and the romance plays a secondary role. She is doing a little bit better job of making that kind of bring the romance to the forefront, especially in this book. In the second half of the story, it's a lot more romance focused, but I don't mind when that happens because I'm really attracted to the theme of social justice in my romance novels. And so the story in A Spy in the Struggle is that of a lawyer that just got a job working for the FBI, and they need somebody to infiltrate this group in the Bay Area. Because she has a connection to this particular town and a school that's really nearby, they sent her in and to spy on this group. And what she realizes is that she's actually ends up connecting to these people she's trying to spy on, and that maybe the FBI was actually lying to her. This book doesn't come out till December 29th, so watch out for it, because if you are interested in social justice in your romance novels, this is going to be a really great. Okay, next book that I finished in October was the book that my book club chose. It's Dear Edward by Anne Napolitano. Dear Edward's is a story of a plane crash. It crashed with an entire family in it, well, a bunch of people, but we're following this family, and there's only one survivor of the plane crash, and it's the youngest kid of this family. He goes to live with his aunt and uncle, but he is dealing with the trauma of having been the only survivor, of losing his parents, of losing his brother who was like his hero, and dealing with the families of the other survivors. This was one of those really emotional, character-driven stories, and I ended up really liking it because there's an emotional journey where there's a really nice payoff at the end, and so I ended up enjoying it. So what did I give it? I think I didn't start because I was waiting to have a discussion with my book club on it. But so for me, it'd be like a 3.5 star book, where it was just really solid. It did a lot of really good things here, and if you're interested in it, I think you won't be disappointed in it. The next book that I finished in October was Holiday Home Run by Priscilla Oliveras. This is, I have a video on this book because it's such a cute, wonderful Latinx holiday romance in which you're following a Puerto Rican kind of event planner in Chicago, and she is falling in love with an ex MLB player. It's super cute, very focused on Latinx traditions and community work, and it's a perfect novel if you're looking for a Latinx holiday romance. The next book that I finished in October was a really good read for me. This is the Book of Echoes by Rosanna Amaka, and this was the Read So Lit book that is hosted by Didi over at Brown Go Reading, Michael, and Tatiana, and I'll list all their channels and information down below. So we just had the discussion for this, and I thought that the three of them just do such a wonderful job with it. I liked it a little bit more, I think, than Michael and Tatiana liked it. You're following the story. It's three different narratives. You're following one story in Nigeria, one story in London, and then you're following this like ghost, this ancestor that had been kidnapped in the west coast of Africa, and then taken into slavery. And then you're following her descendants, one line which evolved in Nigeria and the other one in London. And I just found, to me, the theme here about generational trauma just really spoke to me a lot. I just found this fantastic. It was a great pick for celebrating Black History Month in the UK, and I'm so glad that I discovered this author and these stories, because this is just right up my alley. Really fantastic. Not everybody in the group liked it as much as I did, so I will link the discussion down below so you can go take a look at what other people thought of it. But I really, really enjoyed it. Next book that I finished in October was How to Catch a Queen. So this one will not be released until December 1st, but this is the first book in the Runaway Royal series by Alyssa Cole. So the start of a new series, but there are connections to her older royal books in here. So I think for fans of Alyssa Cole, there's a really nice payoff in here where you see some characters from the other books. In this one, you're following Shanti, who has always wanted to be a queen. Like, this has been her childhood dream and something that her parents have helped her prepare for her entire life. And now she has agreed to an arranged marriage to King Sanyu, whose father has just died and is about to take the throne of this. But in his kingdom, queens don't tend to last very long. There's a trial period of a few months, and then after that, the king decides whether this is his true queen or not. And there has never been a true queen. So lots of things ensue. Alyssa Cole is really good at building relationships, building characters that are fascinating and complex. This is very true here. She creates these fantastical kingdoms that are very grounded in reality, but also kind of exemplify some of the best of what we want out of political organizations and states. I'm really fascinated with what she's doing with these books. One of the things the reason why I didn't end up giving it 5 stars, I ended up giving it 4 stars, was because Shanti's wanting to be a queen for so long. There are times in which I kind of agreed with the people in her life that criticized that goal, because I was like, that's kind of not a very realistic goal. It's a romance novel, so we know it works out for her, but I was a little uncomfortable with some of Shanti's goals there, but I think Alyssa Cole did do a fantastic job of handling that. So as you've seen in this wrap-up so far, there's a few books here that I've read that have not been released yet, and it's because I have just in October started asking for advanced readers' copies of certain books. So far, I've only asked for e-copies, so for ebook copies, and it's worked out for me that I've gotten a chance to review these books. So you'll be seeing a little bit more of this kind of thing in my channel. The first one is The Route of Ice and Salt. This is a book that was originally written in Spanish by José Luis Zárate, and it has been translated into English by David Bowles. And it's been edited by Silvia Moreno Garcia. That's how I first found out about the book, that Silvia Moreno Garcia talked about it on her Twitter. And as soon as the advanced reader's copy became available, I immediately requested. So this is a queer Dracula story, taking us back to the original Dracula story and that trip that Dracula makes across the waters to get to England. And the ship that he comes on, and you're following the captain's narrative. And the captain is queer, but is also closeted to his men. And so you see the captain's narrate his desire for other men, and also that closeted aspect of it. And then in the second half of the novella, dealing with the supernatural forces of Dracula. This is really fantastic. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I am so glad this has been translated. The only thing with it is that I wish I had read it in Spanish, because the language it is written in is super lyrical, very poetic. And so if you don't like that kind of narrative, this book is not for you. But if you can handle it, I think it's really worth it. I typically am not into this kind of narrative, but it worked for me because I could kind of like hear it in Spanish in my head. Is that weird? I feel like that's a weird thing to say, but I could, and I just really, really enjoyed it. But before I go, I just realized I didn't talk about the most important book, because it's not, I couldn't list it on Goodreads because it's technically a reread, and that is the Autobiography of Malcolm X, as told to Alex Haley. So I was extremely lucky that I was able to buddy read this book with a wonderful group of people, including Alba, her channel named Seriela, Brianna, Nashua, Kasen at Always Doing, and Brian at Bookish. I think that's all of their names. I'll list everyone's channels down below, because some people I was already friends with, but then I discovered new channels and new people, and it was just such a wonderful, diverse group of people. Like, we all had very different takes and different things that we focused on as we were reading it, and it was just so amazing. This is one of my favorite books of all time, and I think for me it was because the first time I read this, I was a teenager, and Malcolm X was basically my introduction into more radical politics, and he is great, really great for that. It's not a perfect story. There's a lot of misogynistic elements in there, and like things you won't agree with, basically, because Malcolm X had some really radical ideas, but it's ideas that are very worthy of analysis, and really help you understand racial dynamics in the U.S. Malcolm X is really one of the strongest critics of the U.S., basically. And I remember when I read this book in college, we talked about how if the U.S. were on trial, Malcolm X would be a great prosecutor, because he's able to really pinpoint a lot of problems in society and a lot of the racism, especially in the North, right? One of the things he talks about is the way in which the South racism is just kind of open. People were allowed to be racist. In the North, there was a lot more hidden racism, but it had incredible effects on the lives of Black people in this country. And he just like lays it out clearly and plainly for everybody to understand. He says things that like are shocking, but are also difficult to argue with. And so I think this is still very much a book worthy of reading. But I would also ask you to go check out the other people that I buddy read this with, because as they talk about it, they also just bring out different aspects of it, right? I'm coming from a particular perspective, and then I know Alba has some really good critiques of it, especially when talking about Alex Haley's voice in this narrative and how he might have interfered with Malcolm X's voice. So like, I found that a really good thing to note. And same, I haven't seen what everybody else has said on their channels about the autobiography, but I'm going to be keeping my eye out for all of that, because I just really enjoy reading it with this particular group of people. If any of these books are up your alley, I think they're really worth looking into. So let me know what you thought down below, or if you have any questions. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.